Hello and welcome to another review of a film that I've seen on Mubi. This time I'm joined by Joe again, and we're reviewing the film A Human Certainty, directed by Morgan Quaintance. So Joe, what did you think?
Well, the whole film is quite cute in tone. I thought the technique he uses at the beginning is really effective. The way he has images of a scene which is now empty, while the title cards talk about what was. It creates this really effective sense of melancholy and wistfulness, and it's quite playful. You've got the kind of glittery music, but there's also the forward slanted writing is a bit sort of childlike, and you get a sense of the tone, I think, very early on in the film. It's quite playful and tongue-in-cheek, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it is a melancholy film. It then cuts to quite jarring, I found, images of like gangland murders, and then we learn that he became interested in this photographer, and even that, although of course the images of violence are quite shocking, there's something sort of cinematic about it, because I only ever really see gangland murders in the movies. So even there's a kind of playful distance at work. And it's through that bit of montage that the connection becomes evident, that this is a film about pain and death and loss. The risk, of course, is that the lovesick person who becomes convinced that their pain is uniquely painful is at risk of seeming a bit ridiculous. And he, compares his pain to like the pain of martyred saints and the pain of death itself. And it's kind of silly, but it's obvious that he realizes it's silly. And so ultimately it's a kind of charmingly lovesick commentary. And I found it good company. It was an enjoyable, fun kind of film. I like the method. I really enjoy the montage effect. I think it's remarkable the way you can use title cards in place of speech and still get a sense of conversation and intimacy. It's really clever how that's done, and it seems it's effortlessly done, I think, in this film. The ending is really funny, the way he says, "And now I live with people I can't stand." That really made me laugh. So it's wistful, kind of wryly amusing, fairly lightweight, but absorbing enough. And as I say, I like this method, the kind of montage effect. And it reminded me a bit of that essay film we both watched on Mulholland Drive. It's got that, it is a kind of essayistic reflection, a fairly lightweight, superficial treatise on pain and loss and love. And so enjoyable enough, diverting, but nothing particularly amazing.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I agree that this film is quite lightweight. And for me, it just didn't work in the way that it clearly has worked for you. So the fact that it's lightweight and I didn't connect with it in the way I didn't find it playful. It made it a very different experience for me than you had with it. I mean, I do think that this film, and for me, this is an important distinction, and it may seem a bit pernickety, but for me, I don't see this work as a film. I see this as an artwork using the medium of film, and for me, there is a distinction. A film may have an element of art. Well, I think every film has an element of art in it, but I think that this is distinctly an artwork. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it has its place on Mubi. I really appreciate that Mubi shows a wide range of types of film. I didn't enjoy this work as a film. I was looking at it as an artwork. I really like the length at 20 minutes. I think if you're going to make a kind of experimental art house film, I think keeping it short so that, if for someone like me who doesn't connect with it, you're not making me sit there for an hour, because I will sit through it. But this wasn't demanding too much of me. So I liked that. And in fact, I watched it twice because I didn't enjoy it. The fact that it's 20 minutes allowed me to watch it again. So I really feel I gave it every chance. To me, the clips felt quite random. The different clips, film clips, and the music and it felt quite random, and it felt very kind of autobiographical. Clearly this is a person dealing with the breakup of their relationship. And therefore all of these things, you know, the main thread of the story is that these things are all relevant to the artist, but I never felt that I was being kind of included in that. It never quite worked for me, except obviously there is the thread through all the clips of kind of pain, and you can relate the pain in each of the clips to the grief of the relationship. And I just found it really obvious at times, like that time when he's talking about swimming in the sea and it was all calm on the surface, but actually underneath there were rocks. And I was thinking, God, this is such a obvious metaphor, you know, it's too obvious. And then he tells us that, you know, he says this could be a metaphor for the relationship. Now, maybe I was taking it too seriously, because you raised the possibility that it's playful and that it's self-aware. And so he knew exactly what he was doing there. He was deliberately being obvious. But if that was the case, it just didn't really work for me. In the end, I think I kind of found it self-indulgent. You know, it's like, I didn't find it playful. When he says, he talks about endurance of suffering bringing reward, you know, but where's mine? Where's my crown? Why aren't I a saint? This felt like a, you know, really self-indulgent and complaining and, you know, isn't the world unfair? It just didn't really feel like there was any poetry in this work. I found the font of the text a strange choice, and because I think it gave it a kind of tacky feel, which didn't really serve any purpose. You know, it was a little bit like, you know, Tracy Emin's work might use that kind of font, and it is tacky, but it kind of works in her work. It didn't really feel like that was adding anything to it. I mean, as I say, I did watch it twice. I don't know if I missed something or I've been too harsh on it, but even giving this a lot of leeway as a film and saying, okay, it's an artwork, I didn't connect with it. I didn't really feel any poetry, which for me is how I judge an artwork.
Well, that's a shame. That was pretty harsh. I think, I mean, the thing about like the feeling, the phenomenon of being lovesick, right? You know that your pain isn't uniquely painful and everyone goes through this. And the filmmaker knows that too, but it feels that way, you know? And there's something kind of, I just found sort of charming about that sense that, you know, you're the only person who's ever been through this, even though you know you're not. And the filmmaker clearly knows he's not. I mean, I too, that when I said that the whole film is quite cute, that's sort of what I meant about those things he says about the metaphor, for example, is that this could be a metaphor for our relationship, or maybe it's just a beach. You know, that's a bit too kind of pat and cute, but it didn't bother me too much. I thought it was quite enjoyable. I mean, we've talked a lot, you know, some time ago about like this distinction between film works and artworks, and I think it's an interesting point. But I mean, personally, I just encountered it as like, it is autobiographical, or at least it presents itself as. So it's a kind of, you know, documentary like essayistic reflection, rather than like a narrative film. And so I when it became obvious that's what it was, and it doesn't really pretend to be anything else, I sort of took it on those terms and found it diverting enough. I mean, the fact that he hated it doesn't like anger me. So that says a lot, I think.
I don't want to be too harsh on it, actually, because I do appreciate, I kind of like the idea of it, the way it was put together, and these clips, you know, they are kind of like found clips. And I mean, it doesn't feel like too manufactured or too put together as such. It's like it's working with fairly random stuff, and I like that idea. I did kind of like the structure of it. I like the point you make, and I agree with it, that about comparing it to that video essay that we both watched, and it made me think of that, the writing on the screen, that it was almost, and you know, in that way it does make it quite personal and an interesting reflection. So that's interesting that we had such different experiences of this film.
Yeah.
So next time I'm going to review the film Decision to Leave, directed by Park Chan-wook. See you next time.